I think it's about time we had a talk about trekking poles. Hey guys, Chris with WallowaHikes. If you're new here, this channel is for beginner backpackers. And today we're going to talk about trekking poles. So if you've been out on the hiking trails, you've probably noticed some people have trekking poles and some don't. And maybe you're wondering why. What's the benefit? What's the point of them? Are they just for old people? So I'm going to answer some of those questions today. Let's start with, what is a trekking pole? Well, let's take a look. I have a trekking pole here. This is basically a pole with a handle and a point, and you use it while you're hiking. Why? Well, one reason is stability. Basically, these help you keep your balance. They give you another point of contact on uneven surfaces. These are going to help you stay stable. Now, do you need to have trekking poles? Not necessarily. But the benefit to them is added stability. But not just stability. Trekking poles help with balance. Like I said, they give you another point of contact. And generally, when you're backpacking, you're not just on a nice, flat, even path. So having a trekking pole can kind of help keep your balance. These guys also help reduce knee strain, especially going downhill. So if you're on a steep downhill, that can play havoc on your knees. Just bang, bang, bang. So having a trekking pole helps to offset some of that pressure with each impact, with each step. And as you get older like me, the knees take more of a beating, and having trekking poles really helps with that. As far as going uphill, trekking poles put some of the pressure on your arms. So you're not just using those thigh muscles, those calf muscles the whole time. The trekking poles will offset some of that, put some of that strain into your arms instead of on your legs. So overall, they help with endurance and posture. So as you're hiking up a steep uphill, you're going to be bent over, straining to keep your balance. But if you have trekking poles, you're not going to have to bend so far. It's going to take some of that strain off of you, and it's not going to change your posture to such a degree that you're nearly falling over on your face. Ultimately, whether you want to use trekking poles or not is up to you. There's no definite for sure what you have to do. This is going to be a matter of personal preference. I prefer to use trekking poles. I have used trekking poles since I started backpacking. I used trekking poles because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. But I did find that they really help with those uphills. They really help with the downhills. They help with stability. And if I didn't have trekking poles, I'd probably have a lot more injuries over the years, just from slipping on rocks, doing river crossings, things like that. So let's talk about types of trekking poles. Okay, so you can get a fixed length trekking pole or an adjustable length trekking pole. The only ones I have are adjustable length, but basically a fixed length trekking pole is going to be a one-piece pole. Adjustable trekking poles can go longer or shorter, depending on how you adjust them. Now, different trekking poles will have different types of adjustments. This guy here, little screw here for tension. These guys just clip on like that. Once you fix that clip, that's not moving. So, depending on how tall you are, or if you're going uphill or downhill on steep terrain, you can adjust the length of this. Now, why would you adjust this based on terrain? Well, let's start with the basics of how long your trekking pole should be for you if you're going to use it. All right, I'm going to back up a little bit here. So, I have a trekking pole here, I can adjust this to any length. This can go really high, really low. But for regular walking on just a nice, straight, even ground, generally the most comfortable is going to be when my forearm here is level with the ground. So basically, arm at your side, 90-degree angle. That's where you want it adjusted to. So this is going to be really comfortable over time. However, if I'm going uphill, now, instead of being level with the ground here, I'm going to be reaching up. That's going to cause me more fatigue. I'm going to be pulling more. It's going to affect my back muscles. And so as I'm going uphill, if it's steep, I'm typically going to shorten this. That way, as I'm walking uphill, I'm still kind of at this 90-degree angle here, even though I'm going uphill and this is shorter. Now going downhill, it's going to be the opposite. If I just have this adjusted to where it's even on even ground, as I'm going downhill, I'm going to find myself reaching down. Now, that's not as bad as if you're going uphill. In fact, a lot of times I'll just find myself moving my hand up to the top of this when I'm going downhill instead of adjusting it. But you can adjust it longer going downhill. So on flat ground, it's going to be awkward, but as you're going downhill, it's actually going to keep you at that nice, comfortable angle. So, as I said, all of mine are adjustable. There are different mechanisms for adjusting these. Some screw in, some have these flips. What you buy, most of it doesn't really matter. But that can be a matter of personal preference as well. So while you're shopping around for trekking poles, if you decide that that's something you want to get, you may notice that there's different materials for the handles. So some of them going to have maybe a hard foam or even a plastic here on the hand grip, whereas others are going to use cork. Here's a newer one. Now, when I started, I went with kind of the hard foam. Personally, the thought of cork, I didn't like the idea of how that would feel on my hands. I've since tried cork, and honestly, I do prefer it. Grips to your hand really well. Doesn't tend to pill and rub off the way some of that foam can over time. Now, all of these have held up pretty well. So again, this is going to be a matter of personal preference. If you're in a store that has several trekking poles, go in, feel them, try them out, see what feels good for you. There's no right or wrong here. If there was, they would only make one. Now, you're going to have options as far as what the trekking pole is made out of. The two main ones are aluminum, something like this one that I'm using here. That's aluminum. This is aluminum. Or you can get carbon fiber. So this is a carbon fiber trekking pole, as is this one. Now, what's the difference? Okay, so you're going to find that aluminum trekking poles are definitely heavier. And I suppose if you're doing a ton of miles, you're probably going to notice that at the end of the day compared to carbon fiber. Although over the years, hasn't been a big issue for me either way. So those are going to be heavier than these by far. This is definitely heavier than this. This is carbon fiber. And there's a reason I have both, not just because I like to buy lots of stuff. So the aluminum trekking poles, if you get this jammed in a rock and keep moving, so you keep moving, but the trekking pole stays jammed in the rock, your momentum is going to bend the aluminum pole. But if you're using a carbon fiber pole and you get jammed in a rock like that and keep going with force, this is going to break. So I had a brand new pair of carbon fiber trekking poles, my very first pair ever First trip I was on, going through boulder field off trail, got stuck in a rock, moved forward about a foot, snapped it right off. I've done the same thing with aluminum poles, and they just bent. And often you can bend those back. So different uses. You can get both if you can afford both. But otherwise it's just a matter of personal preference. Climbing Mount St. Helens, I took trekking poles and I purposefully used aluminum poles, knowing that those boulder fields up there, my carbon fiber trekking poles didn't stand a chance surviving that trip. But if I'm doing a lot of miles and they're all on trail and it's not super, super, super rocky, I'm going to take carbon fiber every time. They're lighter, just more comfortable overall. So are there any other benefits to trekking poles? Well, for one thing, I find that if I hike a lot of miles without trekking poles and I've just got my arms swinging at my side, my hands start to swell after a while. And that's really uncomfortable. And there have been times where I'm like, what the hell is going on? And hiked around like this for a while just to get that blood flow back out of my hands. Now, if you're using trekking poles, all that blood is not pooling at your fingertips. So overall for me, that's more comfortable. I don't like having balloon hands. It feels funky. Now that might not be a problem for you, but I've definitely noticed it. One huge benefit to trekking poles is if you're doing water crossings, especially wider crossings with lots of rocks, swift water. Trekking poles are going to give you a third and a fourth point of contact with the ground and help to keep you more stable, especially if you're walking across rocks or if you're just doing a straight water crossing with no rocks. Those are going to give you a point of stability, so you're less likely to go over and be swept down the river. We should talk about water crossings sometime in the future. There's a lot people should know about that just to be safer, but trekking poles absolutely are going to keep you safer when you're crossing rivers. And they're going to give you more confidence as you're crossing the river. Same thing with rocky terrain. Like I said, those boulder fields, it's going to make you feel more confident. You're going to be safer. You're not going to make as many mistakes out of nervousness if you have those extra points of contact. And slippery surfaces, so things like mud, you might have good footwear, good traction, but it's easy to slip and fall and injure yourself out there. I've found on muddy trails, especially muddy trails with some elevation change, trekking poles have been a godsend for me, and I probably would have fallen on my ass a lot more times over the years on muddy trails if I didn't have trekking poles. All right, so I'm going to address something that has been addressed quite a bit on YouTube, and that's how to use the straps. I've seen a few videos telling you the correct way to use the straps. So let's talk about that, because I had no idea when I started out that there was a right way to use the straps. A lot of times, just going in like this, yoink, there you go, got your strap. I'm seeing videos saying that the correct way to do this is to put your arm up through the strap. Okay, well, now I'm holding on to the strap, or if I'm not, then I'm basically right where I was, except it's crossed. Is there a correct way to do this? I guess so. Do I care about that? No. Yeah, this is going to give me some stability, definitely. And after miles and miles, I'm going to wear a blister here. I'm going to wear a blister here because I'm not on the grip. So if you want to buy into that stuff, cool. There's going to be comments down below about this, I'm sure, and that's cool. Whatever. Honestly, hasn't really affected much for me. You know, unless I'm on a real steep incline. So got a little more stability there, but I don't feel like it really matters personally. What does matter is when I'm on a trail that's super steep on the sides or just going up a steep trail, I don't want to lose my trekking pole. Okay, so if you're not using the straps at all, it's pretty easy if you're walking for miles and miles at some point to lose your trekking pole. And that can suck, especially with a heavy backpack, having to bend and pick it up. It can be a pain in the butt. But what's worse is if there's a steep side hill and you drop your trekking pole and it goes down there, it may be lost forever. I've had some real steep climbs down to the edge of a lake to retrieve my trekking pole because I didn't have the strap on. Same thing going down Mount Adams, very, very steep decline. Slipped, fell, had to climb back up because this came out of my hands, didn't have the strap. So straps mostly are gonna make sure that you don't lose your trekking pole out there. And just a little bonus piece here, if you do drop your trekking pole and you've got a big heavy pack, it can be really, really hard to bend down or bend over and get that. And generally when I bend over to get my trekking pole, I lose my water bottles out of the side pockets. So nice little trick, use your other trekking pole, go through the loop. Now we're back to good. All right, one last little piece before we call it a day. You're gonna have accessories that come with your trekking pole, most likely. You're gonna notice these trekking poles I have here, all of these have these little carbide tips. There's also little threads here, and that's for the accessories. So you'll notice these trekking poles I've been using winter camping. On the thread have these little baskets. These are snow baskets. And so while I'm using my trekking poles, this is going to have some surface area, which is going to keep the trekking pole from plunging straight down into the snow. It's got this little rubber tip on here. Your trekking poles are probably going to come with these. And a lot of people don't take these off. I see these all the time while I'm backpacking. Those are simply to protect the carbide tips here. And if you keep them on there, your trekking pole is going to work, but these are going to wear through eventually. These are just protective covers. You should be taking these off. And then that's going to give you a narrower point that's going to be able to grab some traction in the dirt or soil, and it's going to work a little better for you. So again, keep these on at home to keep things protected, but take them off when you're out there. Now, let's look at a few others. So again, this is also another type of snow basket. Again, this is just giving you extra surface area so that those trekking poles don't plunge into the snow. You may also have these smaller baskets like this. And these are mud baskets. So a little less surface area, but these are going to screw on at the bottom, just like so. So if you're in the mud, these are going to give a little bit of surface area so it doesn't plunge all the way into the mud. It's also going to kind of grab at that all the way around this and give you a little more stability. So if it's slippery, this is going to try to keep your trekking pole in place, which will try to keep you on your feet. And it's possible your trekking poles may come with something that looks like this. And these also will screw on there or just pop over the end of your trekking poles. And what these are for are hard surfaces. So paved paths, road walking, things like that. It's going to have a grip basically like your shoe. And that's going to protect your tip, but also give you more grip on those hard surfaces. So that's about it. You know, what brand is the best? What trekking pole is the best? I don't know. You know, whatever you find that you like. I will say that every one of these that I have today is from Cascade Mountain Tech. And that's not because they're the best, although I love them. And ultimately, most trekking poles are the same overall in form and function. You can also get trekking poles that are kind of like tent poles where they have a shock cord and they'll just snap out into one piece. I don't have any of those, but that might be something you're into. But again, Cascade Mountain Tech, they're high quality, but they're way less expensive than the big brands like Leaky and Black Diamond. Perfectly good poles, obviously, but these are about half the price. And I have found that the quality of the carbon fiber trekking poles, these are ultralight, these are light. These have been fantastic. The aluminum trekking poles, pretty much the same as any other aluminum trekking poles I've ever had. You can get them at Costco if where you live there's such a thing as Costco, and you can order those online. And like I said, I've got several pairs of trekking poles. They're all Cascade Mountain Tech. I'm not sponsored by them. They're just a great deal, and I'm not gonna spend money if I don't have to. So, all right, that's trekking poles. So, if you guys have questions, comments, I'm sure there's comments about this. This is definitely an equally divided thing. You know, I'd say half the hikers out there use trekking poles and half of them don't. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel passionately one way or the other. Ultimately, you're gonna find that these are either helpful to you or not, and that's up to you. So anyway, get out there. Like, we're getting close to summertime. If there's anything you guys wanna know specifically before you get out on your first trip, leave it in the comment below or email me at WallowaHikes@gmail.com, and I'll try to address whatever you wanna know. So, thank you guys for stopping by. I'm gonna see you next time.